Dear student, welcome to this demo session for keyword-driven automation framework development. In this course, we will design a framework from scratch and we will try to understand what are the key benefits and what are the offerings from this framework. So let's get started. Now, before starting, let's understand a typical business requirement from any kind of a automation or a QA. That consider that you have a web service and any kind of a product. So a user will be interacting to your product either with a front end or with an API, or we have to also test the databases. Now from the QA, these things are expected, and that is what we will address in the keyword driven automation framework. Now, what are the typical GUI testing needs is basically we have to test the application using a web browser as well as a desktop application. Very simple example is your WhatsApp, and very simple example is your stock market trading desktop as well as web application. So we'll be using a Selenium tool for web browser automation. Now, database automation is also very crucial in terms of doing white box or gray box testing. So we will see the non-functional requirements of database testing using how do you control it. Now, typically from an what is the automation framework and other factors. So we will see these are the different offerings and some of the typical questions asked in interview about a framework. We will design, enhance, and maintain a framework. And one of the key benefit here is we will allow a manual QA to use this framework and for writing test cases and execution. The biggest advantage is the manual QA person need not to have any programming knowledge. Without that, he has to just play with the Excel file, which will be acting as a very input or a trigger to this particular automation. Now in market, there are other frameworks like keyword driven, data driven, behavior driven, which are for a particular business requirement. But that is one of the key feature or one of the key benefit of a keyword driven framework is the person who is going to use it need not to have any programming knowledge. And that is what matters for a manual testing person. Of course, there are other tools like using JUnit or TestNG and Maven tool. So we will be designing this framework and we'll be giving it to a manual QA person who can just reuse it. So these are the very general and high level offerings or attributes or expectation from a framework. Uh, but what is the key benefit is basically simplicity and reusability. So what is key benefit? What is simplicity is basically once the framework is designed and developed by a automation person, then it can be given to a manual QA person who will not even look into the actual Java code or actual code of the framework, but we will just play with the input Excel file as a trigger to that framework and the framework will continue. What is reusability? So there are many ready-made functions which will be designed and developed, and that can be that will be just reused as from a trigger from an input Excel file. Now, in reality, what is a keyword driven or also called as a user action driven framework is basically we will try to address, we will try to record what are the different user actions a user can do on a web browser or also on a desktop, or maybe using a REST API or maybe using a database. We will have a separate functions designed for that, and we will be just calling those functions or invoking those functions with the help of an input Excel. So for input Excel handling, we'll be using very popular Apache POI library. And for unit testing, we will be using this TestNG or JUnit framework internally. Now, apart from this Selenium basic actions, we will be also developing the other actions, popular actions, advanced actions in this course. And we will also see one case for robot library automation and so on. That is for desktop automation. Now, desktop automation is typically required to have controlling a web element or doing a desktop automation. Now database testing, we will see how can we control, how can we connect, disconnect and raise SQL queries to a particular database from an Excel file, from an input Excel file. We will be starting with SQLite database and it can be easily extended to MySQL and PostgreSQL database. So the key advantage of this particular course and as compared to the online other material available is we will be designing the fixtures. So fixtures are something which will help to run the automation code at a very easy level. And once they are developed, they can be easily reused by a manual QA person. So we will see how to set up and use the fixtures and how to control it from Excel. The different fixtures For example, is reporting related, database config related parameter passing, browser setting, and of course the key benefit here or the key advantage is we will be implementing page object model inside the Excel, and that will be controlling your automation framework. Yes, page object model inside a keyword driven framework. Traditionally, this is used in behavior driven BDD Cucumber framework, but we'll be using it in the keyword driven framework, which is a very good idea, very wonderful idea for maintaining automation for a particular web page and so on. Of course, now we will see a demo. So I have a sample web application. So the test case or the test execution, what we will be doing is basically it will log into a, it will go to a website, it will log in and it will check whether login is successful and it will log out. Of course, we will also do a database sample database testing. So basically I have this sample database here wherein it's an SQL database. It will connect to some table. It will connect to database, go to this table and raise a select query and see the output using by controlling from an Excel. We will see a sample Excel input file. We will see a sample report, and we have a fixture or a feature which will send an report by email from your Gmail account to different stakeholders. So let's get started. So this is a sample framework, which is pretty much a Maven framework, Maven plus JUnit framework, and a sample XML, pom.xml file, and so on. So a manual testing person, once the framework is designed and developed, need not to look into the Java code. He has to just execute the particular uh, Maven command. So I have the sample Maven command here, which is basically I'm passing two parameters from the command line, and I'm asking the Maven to execute it. So I will be just pasting this command and that's it. No need to write any Java code and just execute it. So I'm just executing it. So I'm passing the data from an Excel, all the test cases, all the steps required to run this particular test case, and it will actually launch a browser, go to a website, and do the certain actions what we do normally as an end user. So now this first test case will fail on purpose at the last step, so that in the report we will see the difference between a passed test case and a failed test case. Also in the report we will see that for the failed test cases, what are the additional things will be logged as a report. It should be easy for analysis later. It should be easy to give it to developer or for stakeholders to take a count of number of test cases which are pass, fail, and so on. So now second test case here will be invoking a JavaScript pop-up, and it will enter the text into that using a robot class. Right, so now it has entered a text. It will click on OK, and if you see, it has given a reply here. Now this test case, so first test case is failed, so it has generated an exception here. This is the exception, so the same will be logged in the Excel file. So this is a sample demo report file here, wherein for every particular test case and sub step we have pass and fail status here. And if you see one step is failed, so here if you see there's a equivalent or the exception which was logged, so that we will see as a part of report. And of course, if any particular test step is failed, then we will capture a screenshot, we will paste it inside the Excel file, and so on. Now coming to the database part, if you see in the logs, I have one step wherein it will log into database and it will raise a SQL query. So this is a sample output. If you see, this is what is matching with the same data here. So we have seen web application automation using keyword driven framework, and we have seen other aspects, and we will also see the report email, which is a very simple thing. Now I hope you really like the demo, and hoping for you to enroll for the course, and let's see you in the actual course. Thank you.